Hey, White Sox fans, don't stop believing the White Sox might, in the contention window, squeeze themselves into I don't know, top 10 payroll. That's for a different podcast. However, we have news breaking with the White Sox, of course, with the Carlos Rodon decision and the Craig Kimbrell decision. But we're not talking about that, maybe at least until the end of this podcast, because happy Soxivus. It is. Well, we haven't really called it anything. It's just bad games. We are reviewing bad games this week. Concurrent with this podcast is the feature where all of these writers here that are going to be joining on the podcast have written up at least one game discussing, just some of the low points of the Chicago White Sox season. We're going to get to all of them. I'm your host, Brett Ballantini, friend to the White Sox, friend to the White Sox fan. Happy you've joined us. It's After Dark, Southside Sox Podcast 71. Get ready for some lowlights and some fireworks. We are kicking off our review of our Soxivus horrible games of the season. We're going down to Indianapolis, the field office. We got two reps in the podcast here, but we are first talking to Super Joseph Resis, who's chosen a game that I don't think I even listed. I don't remember what it is. It was from April 13th. I take it was a loss. Joe, enlighten me.
Yes, it was a loss. It was a pitcher's duel, and I don't really have anything in particular against those. If given the choice, I would probably prefer to watch a roller coaster game with a lot of runs scored as opposed to a pitcher's duel. But yeah, with Lucas Giolito on the mound, it all started out pretty enjoyable, I would say. It was Lucas Giolito versus Shane Bieber, and everyone was struggling to just put the bat on the ball on both teams. And, the win probability for both teams was, only wandering a very small amount from 50%, pretty much the entire first 9 innings of action. And yeah, that was mostly fine. But yeah, the Sox, it was their first main test against a star pitcher of that year. And Bieber was obviously a superstar in 2020. And this was a golden opportunity to beat a division rival with their best pitcher on the mound. And thanks to Lucas Giolito, they had a very good opportunity to do that, but 9 innings of Shane Bieber on the mound, they only managed to hit 3 singles, and they only drew 1 walk against him. And that was disappointing, certainly. It was also a little bit disappointing to see Jake Lamb at designated hitter and Nick Williams batting 5th and playing left field. That was not good. And I think really the ending more than anything else was just, I went to bed that night thinking really, that's it. That's the way this game's going to end. There was the Manfred rule that kind of reared its ugly head in this one. After 9 innings of brilliant pitching from both teams, Giolito went 7 shutout innings, and the Sox bullpen had pitched scoreless 8th and 9th innings. Bieber went 9 scoreless innings. Then Cleveland gets a free base runner in the top of the 10th, and that base runner came around to score on a very softly hit 71 mile per hour exit velocity grounder by Roberto Perez. And it was just, in my view, a very lame way for the winning run to score in this one, with a very softly hit grounder scoring a free base runner on a rule that I never really liked, at least at the major league level. So yeah, it was just a very anticlimactic way to end it after a brilliant pitching performance, I thought.
Joe, you buried the lead. Jake Lamb at DH. That's really all. It could have been a lot shorter. Jake Lamb, DH, makes it one of the worst games of the year. Okay, now I remember that game because that was our first Southside Sox post-game podcast back with a much younger looking man than me, was aspiring to perhaps do post-game podcast every game. Seemed like a good idea, especially when the next night, if I'm correct, I had the Indianapolis Field Office join me for a post-game podcast celebrating, I believe, a no-hitter. So maybe this was a low light that really led to a really great highlight. So Joe, you picked a good game, but we're not going to get too upset about it because good things We're coming right around the corner. Let's just shift over. You can hand the microphone over to the other room, because next up is Chrystal O'Keefe discussing her game, which, let's face it, I don't think many people would disagree with this as one of the worst of the season. And it didn't have to do with the outcome. It had to do with something that happened, I think, in the first inning.
Second inning. My game was May 2nd. I will say that Jake Lamb did start. So, I mean, wasn't starting off great anyway. Adam Eaton had the day off, so I was pumped. Lucas Giolito was pitching, and he was like actually pretty good through 5. But in the second inning, Luis Robert went down, and he was limping to first, and then he was basically dead. And my hopes and dreams were completely dashed. Like, I was a broken shell of a woman. My hips are really bad, but I was like, maybe like you could take mine. I'd be cool. And yeah, anyway, so that happened. And then Cesar Hernandez had a home run while he was still in Cleveland, and they won 5-0. And Jake Lamb played, and Adam Eaton had to pinch run for Luis Robert when he passed away running to first.
There's a lot of lowlights here. Cesar had to get all those homers out of his system before he came to the south.
That's when
side.
he could still play baseball. Yeah.
This was about the time, Chrystal, that you were suggesting perhaps your yoga instruction might be necessary for the Chicago White Sox franchise.
Yeah, this was peak injury time. I went back and I watched the highlights because I feel like I've repressed a lot of those memories. So writing this paragraph, I'm going to bill you for my therapy next week. Anyway, I went back to watch these highlights and I was like, shit, this game just sucked. Probably the worst game I have watched all season.
Pass that bill on to www.sbnation.com.
Thank you.
Hey,
cover that.
Keelin, no more injuries, right? It's all taken care of. There will be no more leg injuries ever again. Thank you for the good work you've done for us this problem.
Yes, my job's done here.
Yes,
I have power.
Okay, Keelin, we'll come back to you in just a second because we need to talk to Mr. Designer, Mr. Writer. It's Adrian Serrano. Guess what? We are linking in this post, along with, of course, the great Soxivus celebration of terrible games. Great post, terrible games. The Soxivus T-shirt that you can buy. A few of you have bought. Maybe it's just been all staff, but God bless the staff for doing so. Adrian, you have the number 2 selling lifetime T-shirt on the South Side Hit Pen T Public Store. You are the man. We have more designs from Adrian coming, but that's a whole nother podcast. Adrian, let's talk about a game. May 4th, a guy I don't like too much hit 3 homers and a walk-off loss. Just nasty.
Yeah, so I think we mixed up a little bit on this, but it's better to cover this one before the one that was the day before, because the day before was a bigger news story for the Sox. But we're going to talk about May 18th, which was the 3 home run game from Miguel Sano. And really what it boils down to is kind of a microcosm of the season. Again, as a lot of these on the list of worst games of this year, Jake Lamb started, but this was one of the few Jake Lamb promising games, or like stuck with the guy batting 176 and so Jake Lamb actually chipped in with a homer by pitching a run scored in this game, which kind of made it even more of a bummer to lose, because with all the injuries that the Sox had at that point accumulated, when a guy does come through, you kind of want to win that game. But this boils down to what became a problem for the rest of the season, which was really questionable bullpen usage / bullpen, planning strategy, whatever you call it. So you have a guy that hit one homer, 99 miles an hour out, another one at 106 miles an hour out. And then you have Aaron Bummer on the mound, 2-run lead, first base is open. And then instead of putting Sano on to maybe go for the double play to end the inning, they decide, like, you know what, Jake Bummer's going to throw these sinkers past him. And that's not what happened. He hits the 3rd home run. Liam comes in the 9th, but he was planning on coming in with a lead. He comes coming in with a tie ball game. It changes kind of the dynamic of everything. And after a very exciting night the night before. It's just a bad taste in my mouth. I remember that game very quick, and those problems kind of never went away the rest of the season. About really questionable, like, we don't understand the strategy behind this decision. You have a ground ball pitcher out there, and you're going to try to strike out a guy that's hit 2 homers already today, and it just doesn't make sense.
That's an astute pick, Adrian, to pick sort of a theme game, because it was a theme that came back to haunt the White Sox. Oh my gosh, even into the playoffs. They made the playoffs in spite of some of that management. And then they lost in the playoffs because of some of that management. Excellent thematic pick. Hey man, you're more than just a t-shirt designer. Dig it. Before the break, let's talk to Keelin Billue. She's half of Killer Bees. They're both represented. The rumor is new Killer Bees podcast dropping soon. Keelin, this actually turned out to be, it was both a best game and it's now also a worst game. I think it's the only game to make both lists. Oh, there's an interesting reason why. Please illuminate us.
Yes, it started off wonderful. White Sox playing the Twins, who we all hate, and the score was 15-4 in the 9th inning, and we all felt good. We were like, hell yeah, this is it. This is our year. I will say it was at that time that Yermin was kind of slumping. People were worried about him. He had that crazy April that made us all very excited and ready to see what he was going to do. But at this point, he was slumping. So it was the 9th inning, and the Twins brought in Williams Astudillo, renowned pitcher for the team, who threw a 47-mile-per-hour pitch that Yermin hit, but it was 3-0, and apparently Tony La Russa was telling him not to, and thus began a new conversation about unwritten rules in baseball. I actually did not know this until I was looking up things about this game, but I didn't realize that was the first time that had happened in like 20 years when a team was over 10 runs. So that was like, okay, yeah, that's pretty crazy. But I think, in retrospect, and now that things have calmed down since then, just the way it was handled from Tony, it was a bad game because, it was great. Everybody was feeling good, but then the way Tony handled it, it almost felt disrespectful to the players. And I think many of us will remember, and many of us wrote about just the bad vibes that were coming in general from the clubhouse. And I think that was a time too where some of that weakness that we might have suspected Tony to have was kind of coming through. There were players like Tim Anderson and Lance Lynn saying differing things in press conferences from Tony La Russa, and it was just a really terrible time in general, as both fans and I'm sure for the clubhouse in general. And I think after that, obviously some more things happened to Yermin. He had looks like a bit of middle struggles, and continued to decline. And it seems like at the end of this season, the clubhouse, at least externally facing, seemed to have it all together. So who knows what else happened behind the scenes, but yeah, that was a really tough day and tough time. And I felt like we were kind of a laughing stock as a team.
Think. Yeah. The key, let's make it clear. We're all White Sox fans, and because of our venue, we are allowed to be fans. It doesn't make us not objective, and it certainly doesn't make us not critical. Arguably, we are more critical because we're fans. White Sox, are you listening? That's how it works. But I got to say, Keelin, another thing this did was it fueled a whole lot of attention to Southside Sox. Khalid Sullivan wrote a great piece on it, I believe. Sam Sherman may have, but the big one was Anders Johansson, who actually did something that I think maybe has never happened in Southside Sox history, certainly not my tenure, had the #1 most read story in all of SB Nation, which was basically a takedown of Tony La Russa and his absolutely ludicrous behavior. Keelin, I'll also mention, I'm sure it's the only time in history, forget this 10-run thing, the only time in history the manager has jumped out of the dugout like a Smurf and gestured at the player running around the bases, completing his home run in a runaway game, ticked off at the guy. We don't have footage from like the 1890s, but I'm guessing it's never happened before. Maybe it has, but I'm guessing it's never happened before.
Yeah,
So there
was that little clip.
Yeah, very unique game that you chose, and it does happen to be a great game and an awful game and another sort of thematic game. Tony, I guess, sort of normalized a little bit. Oh, we'll see. We have 2022 to find out. Okay, more games to talk about. Let's take a quick break. We'll be back, and who knows, we'll maybe even just talk White Sox news by the end of this whole thing. We'll be right back in a minute. Hey, White Sox fans, I seem to have regained my voice. It's not quite so after dark, but let's still call it Southside Sox After Dark. It's Mothership Podcast number 71. Happy Soxivus. It's yet another week. It's Father Soxivus, Tommy Barbie's with us, and we're going to give him his full credit here. He is our true cleanup hitter. He is the anchor leg of this. So we'll get to him toward the end of the podcast, but he'll get full credit for this entire, well, most of it. We're going to round it up, Tommy. Full credit for it all. And this week is terrible games. The first half has just been delightful, terrible games. Let's start off the second half of the podcast, fresh off a 2-minute plank. The breathing is normalized. Oh man, what a trooper. You know, when she said she was going to find time between the start of the podcast, find time to squeeze in her 2-minute plank, I did not believe her, but then she came back slightly out of breath. I believe her. Jackie, it's your turn for your game. Tell me about this terrible crosstown game, the only truly terrible one this year.
Yes. So I chose August 28th, which was our fifth game, I think, against the Cubs, the crosstown. And if you remember the first 3-game series, we won very handedly. The Cubs, I think by that time, had fire sold everyone away, and we made quick work of those. And then come game 2 of the second one, I don't want to swear. This is called the Patrick effing Wisdom game, where he just kicked our, I'm trying not to swear, he kicked our butts everywhere that game. He was everywhere. He hit 2 home runs. He, at third base, he was just like picking things out of the dirt, robbing hits. And I'm like, who the hell is this guy? Who the hell is Patrick Wisdom?
Jackie, just so you know, we're after dark, so let it fly. But...
Oh, okay. Well, who the fuck is Frank Schwindel? I think like Tommy and others have said, I can't believe that's a real person. That's the name of a real person, but that is the name of a real person and a real, you know, and plus, you know, Alec Mills was pitching for the Cubs. Okay. He's got like an ERA of like 4.5, I think. Okay, fine. We were giving the ball to Lance Lynn. This is the guy we handed the ball to in game 1 of the divisional series. This is our Cy Young finalist candidate, Lance Lynn. And he completely crapped the bed. He was out after 5 innings, and he left, you know, Jose Ruiz and Wright to clean up his mess. And it was just horrible. And the reason 2 reasons why it was so horrible. One is that it was late in August, so it was kind of indicative of the kind of losses we were going to see for the rest of the year that gave us all pause as we went into the postseason. Like, why can't we beat Patrick Wisdom and Frank Schwindel? This is a little concerning to me. And the second reason it sucked is just because we all know that Cub fan who took that one win out of the season and served it to you for breakfast the next day. And next year I would prefer a clean sweep. I don't want to deal with that anymore.
It took a little of the luster off of the crosstown trophy, right? You know, it didn't quite glint as nicely in the sun after a loss like that. Jackie, you make me wonder if we've ever had a podcast where everybody just hauled off and cussed. The post Tony La Russa one may have been. I believe Chrystal got some feedback from the mother-in-law on that one. I think she enjoyed it, but I think there was also some cussing. I don't know if we've ever had one where we just went around the whole Brady grid and everybody cussed, but it's the White Sox.
To be fair, you goaded me to do that. So.
Oh yeah, oh absolutely, that's on me. It's practically me.
And I always give in to peer pressure. Okay,
Jackie, back to some planks then. Peer pressure. That's good vibes, Jackie Chrystal. Thank you for that recap. Terrible game, but still nice to take 5 out of 6 from the Cubs. Let's go for the clean. Anyway, the sweep of 6 next year. Zach Hayes, no legs today. You don't get it every podcast, people.
No.
Don't even watch. Just listen. Don't even watch to this one. Forget about it. Ain't no white mamba here. Okay, ALDS game 2, seizing defeat from the jaws of victory. First of two playoff games we're going to be discussing. Zach Hayes, you're up for number one. Why was this one of the worst games of the season for you?
I mean, tell me why it wasn't one of the,
Okay.
why it wasn't one of the worst
Fair.
games
We
of
can
the
just
season.
we can just trade questions. Do it.
Yeah. I will say, I think you should take a page out of my book for my other podcast. Whenever someone curses, I in Audacity overlay a Hawk Harrelson Mercy as my beeper. Works beautifully. Great story every time. But yeah, man, game 2 of the ALDS was. There was just nowhere left to hide after that. It was everything that we had seen before, and all year we could make excuses. We could say, you know what, we'd seen Tony La Russa not be able to tell when his starting pitcher is gassed. We've seen him, make the very visibly wrong move, first guy out of the bullpen before. And all season, what else are we supposed to do but rationalize and say, well, maybe it'll be different come October. We're going to go get Kimbrel and Tepera, and the bullpen's going to be so good they can't mess it up. Aaron Bummer not being able to throw strikes, and then a few dinky ground balls get through. That's nothing new, but that's the moment right there. 6th inning, game 2, when you see that 4-1 for whatever it was, 4-1, 4-2 lead slipping away, and that was when you knew that was it. Like, they were not going to overcome their flaws. The fatal flaws were fatal. And we had talked about them all year, but as I said in my blurb, that was kind of when the string ran out. That was when there was nothing to do but throw your hands up and say, this didn't work. And it's, for as exciting as much fun as it was enjoying the ride, it's hard to end a season that way, with just being like, damn, everything that we have been afraid of for the past 5 months it happened,
Papa Tony did not rescue us. We thought that that pumpkin would turn back into a carriage or whatever come playoffs, and it didn't happen. But you didn't really think that. I didn't really think that. You didn't really think that. But it was nice to hope and dream.
You listen to me on any of these podcasts?
Yeah, no kidding. You don't have to cuss. I believe me. Well, what we're missing in basketball shorts, we are gaining in delightful toques. Sweet look, Zach. I can't wait for the next podcast to see what else. Who knows? It could be some Southside Hip Pen T Public wear. Who knows? Okay, let's shift over in that playoff series. Final game of the season. Isn't it appropriate that Father Soxivus takes over for us? It's the other half of the Killer Bees podcast. Again, I hear there's a rumor. A new one's dropping soon. Hey, Tommy Barbie, thank you for Soxivus. Thank you for this. Wow, month-long, weeks-long celebration. Oh, there's still one more week. I don't know what we're going to do for it, but there's still one more week. We'll talk about it in a second. But Tommy, you chose the final game, the swan song, the end of the season.
Yeah, and it was useful to use the Doors quote, but that wasn't the reason why I picked it. But yes, so all of you that have read it, but I do start it off with, "This is the end, my only friend, the end." And I wanted to go full apocalypse now with it, but knowing full well that there are going to be other way smarter people writing about other worse games, I didn't want to go too far with it. But it really was the culmination of everything that has gone wrong, because they had just managed to pull together. The offense was clicking. They found a way to come from behind to beat the Astros. The 5% of people that think that Tony La Russa is some sort of guru lifesaver were chomping on Twitter, being like, the Sox are back, and they just crapped the bed. And it was bad. Like, even when Gavin Sheets hit a home run, it was like, that was a nice moment, but the game itself was awful. You had all of the weird stuff happening around Michael Kopech still, where it was clear to the coaches, to the announcers, that nobody really knew what to do with Kopech, but he was fine. He could pitch all day, or he couldn't pitch, but he's pitching, but he's not. It was all bad, and they just looked lost, overmatched, outmanaged. Anything that they could have been beaten at, they were beaten. And what's sad about it is that you look at the roster, you look at how the games were played, and there was a very clear blueprint, I think, to all of us as White Sox fans, as how you kind of go about approaching a team like the Astros. And Tony La Russa just kind of played it like my 8-year-old would play it, and just kind of threw some stuff together and hope it would work. And it was so poorly done. And this game to me is the worst game, because all playoffs long, you saw teams scrapping and fighting. And even when they were down, they weren't out. This was the one series to me where it was just like the White Sox gave up at the end of it.
Tommy, I wish I had known that your 8-year-old was eligible for feats of strength, because he would have been my choice.
There you go.
Tony and take over the big chair next year. Hey, sit down. Don't be shocked. Southside Sox, dear listeners, readers, viewers. I don't watch every single inning of White Sox baseball, but I would dare say, Tommy, the feeling that you had midway and certainly late in that game, that feeling of just, oh my God, can this just get over? I hate baseball. I don't ever want to watch another game. I had that feeling, and maybe nobody else did. That had to be pretty rare this season. I know there were some bad games. We've talked about several, but that one was, and end of the season, of course, and seeing the Astros celebrating, of course, but that's a sick feeling. Even before it was like done, you had that feeling in your gut that was like, oh God, come on.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I just want to say that I avoided watching the Astros celebrate on our field, and to this day, I still have not seen it. So please do not link that now that I've admitted that. But
okay,
I'm not
Twitter
watching
timeline
that.
later, I'm sure.
I know it. Don't.
Good vibes. We already heard you cuss. We're not going to provoke you further. Come on now. Okay. Hey, listen, we've got bonus time. How about that? We've covered many of the games written about. A few of the writers did not show up for this podcast. I suppose, even though in a couple of days we're going to have, I think Lee Allen was terming it more like a bad moments, bad feelings podcast. Boy, it's a bad week. Uh-oh. Here comes that after hours, after dark voice. Okay, rescue me soon, folks. But let's talk a little bit about the news of the week. Also sort of bad. Carlos Rodon not getting to qualify. Hey, help me, guys. My voice is going. Rodon and Kimbrel, reactions to both.
I don't want to talk about it. I'm pissed.
Apparently, according to some people, exactly 5 starters, so there was no room for Carlos Rodon.
Thanks, Chuck.
Man, Andrew Heaney just got $8 million from the Dodgers. So I'm going to say, if the White Sox really thought that there was a danger of him accepting the offer, his arm better not actually say this, but either his arm is really, really shot, or the White Sox just massively fucked up again. The only other thing I can think of is that Jerry's doing him a favor and saying, we're not going to hold down your market by throwing the qualifying offer at you. But unless he's total pulled pork on the left side of his arm, then I don't see this. I don't get it.
Don't worry, we have Gold Glove winner Dallas Keuchel. So we don't really need to worry about starting pitching at all. Like, screw it. Let's just get no one.
I hear Tommy's 8-year-old is available.
There's a rule, Chrystal, that you can only spend $18 million on one starter. And so, hey, listen, Gold Glove kid Coochie is, I guess he's the guy.
Give it to the garbage.
Because they're going to trade him. We've had some entertaining back and forth on the Southside Sox account there out on the social media. And there, I guess, have been some reasonable takes and some likes. And then there have been some people, even like Chuck, who say, hey, man, no room for Carlos, because it's not like we couldn't have used 6 or 7 or 8 starters this year. This kind of thinking is bizarre. And honestly, folks, really, I think this was a thought exercise I threw down in the comments for maybe the Rodon article, the very bitter article. I'm sorry, I wrote, sorry, White Sox fans, we love you. And we hate us, White Sox.
Enjoy the ride, Brett. Enjoy the ride.
Yeah, and yeah, exactly. Just sit back and enjoy the ride. But okay, thought exercise. Seriously, if you knew you were getting Carlos Rodon next year, and we don't know this at all, but if we knew you were getting the Carlos Rodon from this year, but you knew you were going to pay him 18 million for just that half season, and you can't even choose which half it is. He's not going to pitch in the playoffs. He's going to give you a killer Cy Young 5 WAR, basically half season, 2/3 season. Are you going to pay for that? I think that's still a bargain.
Exactly. It is. And that's what I don't understand. Like, unless the Sox know, even if he's hurt, let's be honest, there are guys that are hurt that are going to make more money than Rodon would have made off of that qualifying offer. A 1-year, $18.5 million contract is nothing. This is an organization that refuses to pay starting pitchers beyond 4 years, and certainly doesn't want to pay them much in terms of an annual value. So I don't know how you can't look at this as just a very low risk move, where if he accepts it, great, you have a half season. If he doesn't, great, you get a draft pick out of it. It was a win-win to me.
Speaking of bad news, let's just keep talking about bad news. Somehow Southside Sox was frozen out of the SB Nation offseason general managing simulation. I don't know how that happened. I'm a friendly guy. Some people like me. Somehow we did not get invited into doing this. And I got to tell you, based on what I've seen, whoever this replacement GM is, and how I think Zach can speak to this, how horrible a job they've done, we are still going to write it up as if we need to cover it, because I guess this is a long introduction to say, Tommy, don't worry. The White Sox, in at least the offseason simulation, they signed Jake Diekman to start for them.
Are you trying to get me to drop an F-bomb too? Seriously?
No, listen, we just got Zach. So man, we're getting close to the full package. When we get Joe, oh man, the internet will melt. But I'm not prodding you, Joe. But one day it could happen. Yeah, so that's just more bad news. Craig Kimbrell is apparently there's a secret plan where they're going to trade him and not have to eat $8 million of the dollars. I understand that if they're stuck with him, it can still work. But this idea that it's like Rick Hahn's a genius and he's going to make it work, and he knows the market, and he's going to easily flip him for like a usable player, not just Jackie Bradley Jr. Seems maybe too much faith. I don't know.
I doubt Rick Hahn has a secret plan to fight inflation. So
like, I know it's a long off season, probably even a longer off season than normal because of whatever's going to happen with the CBA, but it just off to an auspicious start that like a 5 WAR pitcher isn't worth $18 million, and then the Hall of Fame closer we traded prospects for, we're desperately trying to trade his money away also. It doesn't feel great.
I thought I just heard you say, Jackie, that Rick Hahn doesn't have an OnlyFans, which would be which honestly would be a better option than losing Rodon and keeping Kimbrell.
We could get the money that way, probably.
That's how you get that. Are you listening?
I don't know if we could.
I don't think so. Plus, every time he's on Zoom, there's like garbage trucks in the background and dogs barking, which I guess that could be a thing. All right, no judgment, no judgment.
That's how we get a seat at the table. You
gotta do what you gotta do, even if it's in Dockers.
Sometimes you gotta self-eat picks.
I wish that the order of the decisions had been reversed, because if Rodon had been denied and Ashley Rodon had to send her sad tweet out, and then maybe there was pressure then to not do Kimbrell, then I could see like the White Sox are they're packing up the cats, forget about it. They're going all in for no season, and we're just going to like chisel it down. But the idea that you're like, well, we're going to save some money, but then we're handing it to the Hall of Fame closer who did not earn much goodwill from the White Sox. It's just very bizarre. What goes on in the head of this team? I guess Rick Hahn's thinking about his OnlyFans. Oh, Rick! Oh my goodness! We can fuel a whole off season of podcasts now, or maybe even
a whole different podcast.
or maybe I hear Killer Bees dropping soon. So hey, that's all I'll say. Hey, listen, we're running out of time. It is Southside Sox After Dark. Podcast number 71. We are reviewing worst games like ever or for this season. Hey, next week is What is it? It's the Soxivus poll. What is it? What? No, miracles. It's miracles. Still don't know what it is, but it's miracles. We're going to do something about miracles. It's coming. Stay tuned for it. Enjoy this podcast. Enjoy reading all week. We got more stuff coming, even though we're all exasperated about this team at the moment. Okay. Bad Vibes Week continues. Enjoy. I hope you enjoyed this podcast. Enjoy the story. And we'll be back with another podcast celebrating Soxivus real soon, perhaps including Father Soxivus himself, Tommy Barbie.